The new book out today. It's called I really like this cover, so to speak. It's very, very subtly red, white, and blue, if you notice. The Mind of a Conservative Woman Seeking the Best for Family and Country from Senator Marsha Blackburn. Beautiful state of Tennessee. Senator joins us now. Always so good to see you, and congrats on the book. I really love this cover. This is a very great cover.
Oh, I'm telling you, we are so excited about the book. I worked on it for a while, and Dana, I actually came about to writing this because I would be talking to women, and they would say, I'm not a Democrat or I'm not a Republican, but let me tell you where I come down on these issues. I look at the issue, I think it through. I think about the Constitution. I want fairness. I want equality. I want justice. I want the rule of law, and I want people to abide by the rule of law. And you know what? They talk themselves around to the point that they are center or center right, which is where conservative women are. So for me, being a conservative woman and dealing with this media that will not get off our back, they treat us like
Yes.
we're fourth class citizens. And so I said, you know what? We're going to put pen to paper on this, and we're going to talk about the history of conservatism and where we've come from, and look at some of the great writers, and then talk about how it brings us to modern conservatism and give people something that they can use to defend themselves, whether it is elected officials in the public square or it is someone who's wanting to defend themselves to
Yeah.
their coworkers, their friends, and their family.
Exactly. And I love also, by the way, the timing of this book, because as you are well aware, there's a lot of discussion about women in general. You have that, I think it was during the Bush years, or no, during the Clinton years, it was the soccer mom. Then it turned into the security mom after 9/11. Now it's actually kind of the security mom again, because women are looking at this stuff happening in their neighborhoods. We further know this because the number of women that are going to get their concealed carry license, they're more than men in most states right now. It's significant.
And the thing is, they are suburban women
Yes.
who are getting they're purchasing a handgun, they're signing up for classes, and you have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden that are going to take your guns away. I don't think so. I think this is one of the reasons that President Trump is beginning to do so very well with women.
Yeah.
And his numbers are coming up in the suburbs because he's talking about safety and security for you, your family, your children,
And
making
schools.
sure there is healthcare security for you, not letting government take away your health insurance and give you socialized medicine.
Yes, and he's mentioned a lot about school choice, has spoken quite a bit. There were speakers at the RNC. You had a great speech, by the way. We featured it in the newsletter online. The discussions on school choice. This is something, especially now, since a lot of schools aren't even fully open all the way for in-classroom instruction. And you have a lot of working parents out there that are struggling with multiple children at home, and they're realizing, well, why is it that my friend's school's open, mine's not? Let's look at their test scores. They seem to be performing better academically. Then there's this big discussion of school choice. That is a supremely attractive issue to women as well, who, as you kind of alluded to a little earlier, maybe they don't identify as conservative, but they sure do share a lot of our principles.
Well, you're right. And that is why they need to have this landing spot so that they can say, you know what? I am center right. And this is my value system. And when they look at issues like school choice, a great example is here in Nashville. You have the private schools, the parochial schools are all open, and they have in classroom education. The surrounding counties to Nashville, the schools are open, the school buses are running, the kids are playing sports, but in Nashville, Davidson County, where you have a Democratic city council and mayor, schools are shut down. And you have kindergartners that are in remote learning. It makes no sense. And last night, there was a parents' protest where they showed up to peaceably assemble and petition their government and ask to get their children back in school.
I I mean, that kind of gave me chills to hear about parents in Nashville protesting at the schools. That's not something you hear about. That's not, you don't hear that quite a bit. I have to say, do Democrats realize that they are running people into the GOP's arms by doing this?
I don't think they do, because what is happening is people who never would say that they were center right or conservative or
Yeah.
Republican are beginning to say, I have had it. You gave me a 34% property tax increase. You have somebody out here that is supposedly the city's medical director, and they keep saying things that are really counter to what the state's medical director is saying, and you're keeping our city shut down. You are keeping our schools shut down. These children need to be back in school. And I think, just as you said earlier, people have just about had enough.
Yes, they have. And I'm so glad that you mentioned particularly some of these numbers with the CDC, because when they were revising, the CDC updates their numbers, I think, weekly, and they were revising their numbers showing that 6% of roughly around the 153,504 coronavirus deaths that were recorded, about 6% of them were the ones that actually died from the coronavirus. So that's about 9,000, a little over 9,000 fatalities total, as opposed to 153,000. I know that some officials were saying that maybe we need to sit down and have a discussion with the CDC and figure out what's going on there. Are you of that decision, of that mind as well?
Well, I fully recognize that comorbidities and complex medical conditions are what have caused many of the deaths, and it would be something in addition to COVID.
Right.
And COVID would have made the situation much worse. We have seen this in our nursing homes. I think what we have to do is allow our healthcare experts to begin to work these numbers through. And rather than more so on a federal level, I think that on a state and county level is where we want to get that. That is how we're going to figure out what did and did not work.
Right.
You know, you look at a state like South Dakota with Governor Kristi Noem. She never shut her state down. And they have had one of the lowest infection rates
Yes.
that is there. You look at other areas that had had a mask mandate, they took it off and then had to put it back on. And some of the work in Texas, some of the work in Florida, you see this, where they had to backtrack a little bit and then come back. So I'm looking for that state and local data.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great point as well. I know, I think Georgia was one of those states where the governor there, Kemp, he had some really good medical professionals that were on his advisory team, and their numbers were consistently different from what was being reported nationally, and to the point where they were really trying to malign his character to save Cuomo. Turns out Kemp was right. Georgia was right. Georgia wasn't the hot spot. It was New York and some of these other states. We're speaking with Senator Marsha Blackburn. Her new book is out today, The Mind of a Conservative Woman, Seeking the Best for Family and Country. And I'm actually going to start this evening. I love this because you have your personal story. I know, because I was skimming a little bit last night. You have your personal story, and you kind of discussed. Tell me a little bit about that, because how did you come into being a senator and being such an outspoken conservative woman? And not only that, but I love that you also help empower other women, because in politics particularly, it can be very cutthroat, and you do a lot to grow the influence of conservative women. Talk to me about that.
I grew up in a conservative home and a family that believed to give back more than you take and leave things in better shape than you found them. And so I had that foundation of being a conservative. I went to college, had the opportunity to debate, if you will, some of my friends that were Democrats, and we would have these robust discussions. And Dana, you know, one of the things that is missing right now with cancel culture is you've lost the ability to debate with a point counterpoint. And we need to put that back into our system. That's how you arrive at consensus, and it's how you learn. Yeah. And for these college campuses to take that away is just terrible. And then I worked in my community. I was a volunteer. I spent a lot of time helping to build our Republican Party. Then, when my children were older, got into elective office. And I realized that there were 5 things that I am so passionate about preserving. And I get up every day as a happy warrior to go defend faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And I realized if I was not going to speak out, who was going to speak out?
Right.
And Ronald Reagan told us, you don't pass freedom on in the bloodstream. You have to fight for this every single generation to pass it on to the next. And when you look at the things that are lasting that you can do that is going to really improve the lives of your children, you look at these founding principles of our nation, this wonderful experiment called America, and you say, you know, I want to do what I can to make this country and community much better. And so I'm going to invest my time and energy there. And that really is how I arrived at it, just being passionate for what freedom, free people, free markets will do for a community. And of course, along the way, I've led some fierce fights. I led the battle against imposition of a state income tax in Tennessee. I have had to push back on the liberal press nearly every day of my political life. I've been mocked and called all sorts of names because I'm pro-family, pro-life, pro-business, pro-military. But you learn not to let the pettiness slow you down. You just shake it off, push it aside, and keep your eye on the goal, which is being able to say, I've done everything I could do to help preserve freedom, to educate others, and to give women a guidebook and to help them learn how to talk about these issues and to understand, you know, sometimes you do have to speak up.
Right.
And this is why I go into the history of conservatism and look at how we developed our Judeo-Christian ethic, and we get our federalism principles from the 12 tribes of Israel. And we go from Jerusalem to Athens, to London, to Philadelphia, and then into modern day conservatism through the writings of de Tocqueville and Burke and Russell Kirk and William F. Buckley and Frederick Hayek. And I even put a reading list in here because making certain if we use this book to help women armor up and raise their hand and volunteer for a board or commission or run for a local school board or run for a state house or for the U.S. House or Senate, that is something that is very much worth my time.
Amen to that. I love the inclusion of the reading list. So every woman particularly needs to go out and get this book. And I love that it's very informative as it is, autobiographical as well. But I love that. And you do so much. And I have to say, I have family in Tennessee that have voted for you and have supported you, and you are their number one. So they very much appreciate that, and we do as well. Senator Marsha Blackburn, the new book, The Mind of a Conservative Woman, Seeking the Best for Family and Country. I just love that cover. It's just so nice, very flattering. Senator, always so good to see you.
Your viewers will stay up with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, Twitter. It is at Marsha, Marsha, says, Says. At Marsha Says.
At Marsha Says. There you go. Senator, always such a pleasure. We appreciate your fight on behalf of the Republic. God bless you.